Well, hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another evening with Blockchain Braun. It's good to have you here tonight. As you come into the door, if you would please smash up the like buttons, subscribe and tell to a friend. I would greatly appreciate it. Tonight, we're going to talk about the rewiring of the system. The rewiring of the system. Let's start in 1929, 1930, 1931, 32, 33. We're talking about once in a generation type events. Let's go to the Great Depression. Situation where you had a market collapse. Poverty nationwide. A lot of uncertainty. But during that time, there were a lot of people, or should I say, maybe not a lot of people, but there were certain ones that came out of the Great Depression richer, wealthier, and in a better position. Of course, everybody did not have that line to where they could achieve such a thing. But during times where there is a collapse, or during times where there's something that is catastrophic going on, those are times, well, if the right decision is made and a person, individuals, corporation, entity are able to keep their wits about them and able to maintain and stay calm through the storm, so to speak, they can come out on the other end better than they were before. So from there, let's go to 1944 during the Bretton Woods meeting. After World War II, there had to be a decision made on which particular country or which particular system would be considered to be the world reserve currency. The United States dollar, being backed by gold, $35 per ounce, not only brought stability to a particular currency, which of course brought value, but then it was backed by something of even more value, if you will. And so with that, they decided, the United States being in a better light, with a stable currency, this is going to be the world reserve currency, United States dollar. So the other currencies around the world began to tie itself to the US dollar and try to peg itself to the US dollar, with the US dollar, of course, being pegged to gold or tied to gold, backed by it, which gave it stability. I want you to keep that word in mind, stability. It's going to prove to be very important during the course of this video. So that leads us to another, I would say, generational change, especially in regards to our financial system. In 1971, Nixon decides to end the gold standard. I guess from his standpoint, he thought that he would be better able to control the US dollar that way. Perhaps the US dollar would be more malleable. And so he stopped the gold standard, which in my humble opinion, the US dollar has been off course, though we've been able to maintain and stay stable, but we've been off course since the gold standard stopped in 1971. I truly believe that if we would have kept the gold standard, that we would still be in really good shape. Now, having said that, we aren't in detrimental shape, but some things I'm going to go over is going to show you where we are and that there is a sense of urgency and some changes, some drastic changes had to be made. So we'll continue on. The next big, I would say, generational changing thing in regards to our financial system after the gold standard stopped in 1971, I would say would be the 2008 financial crisis, coined the Great Recession. Now, what sparked this was credit default swaps and the real estate crisis. Now, with credit default swaps, you had a lot of bad debt wrapped up in an instrument or security that was being traded on the market. Came to a head where people were not able to pay mortgages. They had variable interest rates that had some high swings as far as interest is concerned, and well above what they were paying previously. Due to that, combined with the credit default swaps, combined with a whole lot of other bad debt situations, it crashed the market tremendously. So much so that if the government didn't come in and intervene, it was almost like that particular night, then the next day, there wouldn't have been any economy. It was to that point. So the government came in, intervened. You had a few suffered, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Countrywide. You had certain other entities on the ventilator, like your Wackovias of the world, where the government had to come in and say that, hey, your reign is over. Somebody's going to have to buy you out. Which, of course, Wells Fargo came in and took on that responsibility of buying Wachovia. But you had Lehman Brothers collapse, Bear Stearns, Countrywide. And really, since that time of the 2008 financial crisis, I don't know truly if we've totally recovered from that. And there were a lot of renowned economists, renowned finance individuals who said such. Now, on the tail end of the 2008 financial crisis or the Great Recession, you had the Satoshi Nakamoto white paper on Bitcoin. Same year. That's important too as well. Keep that in mind. As you would keep stability in mind too, as I mentioned before, keep in mind that the Satoshi Nakamoto Bitcoin white paper was written and presented on the tail end of the 2008 financial crisis. So Satoshi Nakamoto writes his paper on Bitcoin, peer-to-peer, distributed ledger technology. And so, as you can see, currently where we are today, there were a lot of things that had to be put in motion well before we came upon this particular time we're in now. Now, as I go through this, please don't think that I'm trying to make a push towards one political party or another. I want to make myself clear on one thing, and I'll probably mention it again during the course of this video. No matter who would have been in office, no matter who's going to be in office. This problem, or coming upon where we're at right now, this has been decades in the making. So you would have seen some form of where we're at right now, no matter who would have been in office, maybe in some type of different context, but you would have seen some semblance of this. Now let's continue on. So you had a Bitcoin white paper, and then all of a sudden, September 2019, you had the JP Morgan coin. Now, of course, after the Bitcoin white paper was written, cryptocurrency began to surface. You had it really come into prominence in 2016, end of 2016, going into 2017. That's when it became even more renowned, so to speak. Had more individuals get involved, but still a whole lot of people not be involved. So cryptocurrency began to surface, and banks began to work with the technology. Now, I want to say something here. Don't you think for a minute that this hasn't been planned or in the making already? If I know, which I believe I know, that our US currency or the US dollar was in trouble, you can rest assured that people with more power than I have, people with more wealth than I have, people that has more connections than I do, i.e., if you think about the Rothschilds started the first bank in Germany, which basically is the precursor to the current banks today as we know them 600 and something years ago. When you're talking about that type of longevity, and as you know, a very wealthy family, you're talking about 600 years of wealth. You're talking about 600 years of connections and relationships. You're talking about 600 years of influence. And I don't care who you are or who you think you are. When someone has a 600-year head start on you, they're way, way, way out of your league and out of your reach. So if you think for 1 minute that someone of that nature, or someone that's in connection with someone of that nature, or the powers that be today, governments, officials, wealthy people, people that have influence over world events, if you think for 1 minute that they don't know what I'm telling you, then you're badly mistaken. And you have to realize that they're going to put things in motion years ahead of time, which you're about to see some results of that here shortly. So JP Morgan starts the JP Morgan coin and began to do a pilot with that in 2019. Now, JP Morgan Chase, when you look at your banks, let's say you look at your top 4 banks. Let's go ahead and start here. The top 4 banks are going to be JP Morgan Chase, I think $3.39 trillion, somewhere in there. You're going to have your Bank of America. You're going to have Wells Fargo. And I believe your 4th one would be a Citigroup. Now, anytime JP Morgan Chase does something, you can rest assured that the other banks are going to follow suit. It is the most powerful bank in the United States, the most influential. And so when they start doing things, everybody in the industry takes notice. So just wanted to say that. So JP Morgan starts in 2019 working with their internal version of a stablecoin in the JP Morgan coin. Well, that's interesting, because just a couple of years before that, banks, the government, and everybody else said they hated blockchain technology. They hated Bitcoin. They hated cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency was too risky. Blockchain technology was too risky and uncertain. But now you're working with it? Just out of the blue? These people and these entities, they don't do anything just out of the blue. So, very important, they began to work with stablecoins, JP Morgan Chase, as a pilot in 2019. Ironically, during that same year, in September 2019, same month, Wells Fargo, place where I worked at, and I worked at for a total of 7 years, 7 to 8 years, I think, total, at different points in time. Might have been 8. Wells Fargo begins to work with the Wells Fargo Digital Cash. Same month, same year, which is their version of the stablecoin. So they start their own pilot. Now, let's stop here. Anytime we would have corporate meetings during this particular time, everybody wasn't on cryptocurrency. A lot of people did not hold cryptocurrency in a good light. They thought it was a joke. But every corporate meeting, I would bring up, well, what's going on with the Wells Fargo Digital Cash? What's happening with that particular innovation? How are you guys working with that? What are the new progressions on the Wells Fargo Digital Cash coin? And every time I would bring that up, they would look at one another like, man, how in the world does he know about? And then they would just kind of, well, we're working with it, not in a great fashion. This is not something that we're looking to say we're going to put out next year, or that we're coming upon some type of conclusion on what we're totally going to do with this. But we're working with it, we're testing it, and we're going to see where it goes. And that's pretty much it. And they will move on. But they would definitely look at one another like, man, how in the world does this guy know about this? But let's get past that. So you had a JP Morgan coin and you had a Wells Fargo Digital Cash, both stable coins, mind you, 2019. But you would be under the impression, because people haven't really been talking about it, that this just happened this year. But no, they've been working with this, which gives me the belief that they knew they had to do something. They had to. Because why would you work with something of this nature that you said you hated if you didn't need to? Why work with it? And then all of a sudden, let me not get ahead of myself. We'll get to that. So then we had another issue that I think just totally went past people. We had what we call a repo crisis. Now, when I talk about repo, I'm not talking about somebody coming to get your car or somebody about to repo your possessions because you didn't pay for it. When I talk about repo, it is in reference to the financial industry and the finance industry. It is in reference to repurchase of agreements. So the repo scare, again, September 2019, but then came to a head in 2020 during the vid. Now, I'm not going to say the whole word of what it is that happened in 2020, the global pandemic, because I heard there are some issues with that when you mention a whole name. Don't know if that's true or not, but I'll just call it the vid just to be protected. So in 2020, all of a sudden, you have this global pandemic, but around the same time, the end of 2020 or the end of 2019, going into 2020, you had a repo scare. Now, when I refer to the repo scare, this is what I'm referring to. The repo scare refers to a disruption in the US repo market that happened in September of 2019, where a shortage of cash and a surge in demand for overnight loans caused a short-term interest rate spike dramatically. This was driven by a confluence of factors, including large corporate tax payments that drained bank reserves and large Treasury security settlements. Now, that's huge because of that, you had dried up liquidity. You had a high demand, but not enough supply of cash. Keep that in mind. Now, continuing on, the Federal Reserve intervened by injecting billions of dollars into the market to restore liquidity that had dried up, highlighting potential vulnerabilities in the financial system.